Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Unconventional Medicine podcast. I'm your host, Dr. Kate Davis. I am a functional medicine doctor specializing in chronic gut issues. So, gut health, all that stuff. So, if you're new to the podcast, I basically, talk about all different, topics in health and wellness and really just getting to the root cause of what is causing all the issues that you're dealing with. I do talk heavily on gut health because that's what I specialize in. So, if you're someone listening who deals with IBS or constipation or bloating, acid reflux, food sensitivities, then this is definitely the right podcast for you. And so I just want to welcome you to the podcast. And we're basically just going to dive in today into talking about what is leaky gut, how to fix it, how to know if you have it, what are some of the biggest signs, what are some of the biggest triggers, and how can we actually heal this issue. And so again, if you're new to the podcast, I would love it if you love this episode, if you've listened to some of my other ones, please rate the show. You go do a 5-star review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or if you're on YouTube, go ahead and hit that subscribe button right down below so that you can hear more of my content and get it, every 2 weeks. And I basically want to talk about a really important topic today. So again, leaky gut, it's a big buzzword, and I've heard so many people who reach out to me tell me that they've gone to their doctor with all sorts of, gut issues that they're dealing with. Maybe loose stool or constipation or bloating, or, all of a sudden they're sensitive to gluten or dairy. And the number one thing that people tell me is that their doctor just kind of minimizes it and says, oh, that's not a real thing. And that's just so far from the truth. You guys, leaky gut is real. If you look at research, what you're going to want to look for is increased intestinal permeability. So I want to start off this episode by just talking about what is leaky gut, because obviously we got to know what it is to know how to fix it. And so if you're new to this term, basically what that means is in your gut lining, we have these fairly tight junctions that, we don't want waste products that are trying to exit, our bowels into the toilet to slip back into our bloodstreams. So we have this gut lining that basically separates our waste products from our bloodstream. We do not want those two intermixing. Now, we do want these tiny these holes, these little gap junctions in our gut to allow nutrients from our food to go into our bloodstream and go anywhere in the body that our body needs them to, do its daily functions. And so we want to have a little bit of, an opening in that gut lining, but we don't want it to become so inflamed that we start getting large gaps in the gut where now all of a sudden, foods that we eat, you can get large food particles like proteins, like gluten from bread, or, the proteins in dairy that can now all of a sudden slip through those giant gaps in your gut lining. And if anything enters the bloodstream that's not supposed to be there, like large proteins and food particles and things like that, your immune system is always roaming in your bloodstream, and it'll see that particle and say, what the heck is this doing here? This doesn't belong. So it'll tag it as a foreign invader. And now every time you eat that food, you trigger a slight immune response in the body. Now, what that causes in your body really depends on the person. For some people, it's brain fog. For some people, it's extreme fatigue after they eat. For other people, it's stomach aches, migraines, headaches, you name it. And so we don't want this lining in our gut to break down, because not only will foods cross over and trigger all these food sensitivities, but also you'll get waste products that are just slipping back into your bloodstream, going through the liver again and creating a ton of inflammation in your liver. They can also cause inflammation elsewhere in the body, because anytime something gets into your bloodstream, it can go systemic and it can create a lot of inflammation and a lot of issues throughout your body. So that's what leaky gut is where that gut lining becomes so inflamed that we get these large gaps in it instead of the small ones that just allow micronutrients to go through. And now we've got all sorts of things that can just cause massive inflammation and a lot of issues in the body. So leaky gut is bad. It's, it causes so many issues, which I'm gonna kind of dive into. But some of the most common symptoms of leaky gut that I see in people, because obviously I'm working with chronic gut health, is food sensitivities. And, this is something I had dealt with personally for about a decade, where I couldn't eat bread or dairy, any sort of dairy products, any sort of gluten, for almost a decade. And, I would just get so bloated, so constipated for about 5 days that I just avoided those foods at all costs. And there's a lot of people who struggle with that, where maybe they go to Europe and they can eat all the food they want because the food is just processed differently. And, food quality is so incredibly important, you guys. There's also a lot of things that are added to the gluten in America that actually makes it that a lot of people cannot handle any sort of gluten products because of all the stuff that's added to it. So that's a whole other topic. I'll probably do another episode on that one because it's a really important one. But food sensitivities are big. Now, what is a food sensitivity? I'm not talking about an allergy where you get an anaphylactic reaction like people with peanut allergies and things like that. I'm talking about something that you used to be able to eat as a child, zero issues, and now all of a sudden as an adult, you can't handle that food anymore. That is a food sensitivity. That's something that your body, for some reason, has just become, really sensitive to. Your immune system all of a sudden is just mounting a response every time you eat that food. And we've got to figure out, what is the big trigger that's causing that. So food sensitivities are big because, again, those food particles, those large ones, will slip into the bloodstream, trigger an immune response. Now, every time you eat that food, your immune system reacts to it and it causes a lot of issues. Another symptom of leaky gut is chronic gut issues. So obviously, if you get a breakdown of that gut lining, you're now not as able to absorb nutrients, to produce nutrients, to regulate hormones, to produce dopamine and serotonin and all the things that make you happy and joyful. There's so many functions in your gut that are just needed for pretty much every system in your body to work. I always talk about with my patients how the gut is kind of the central hub of every other system in your body. It's the number one way waste products get out. Hormones are regulated there. Dopamine and serotonin are produced and primarily stored in the gut. So those happy, joyful chemicals that prevent anxiety, depression, things like that. And I've seen a lot of people's, mental health improve drastically just from healing the gut. But also, that's where a lot of nutrients are produced and absorbed. And so you could be eating the best diet. You could be taking all the right supplements. But if you don't have a way to absorb those nutrients or to produce the nutrients that your body needs, it doesn't matter. You're just creating really expensive pee and really expensive poop. And so that's why we've really got to figure out, do you have leaky gut? And let's heal up that gut lining so that not only can you do all those functions I just talked about, but you can actually remove waste and toxins from your body effectively. And you should be pooping 2 to 3 times a day in order to do that. So really, really important to really heal up leaky gut because it can cause so many other issues. Besides just gut issues, we've also got joint pain because now when you get toxins and inflammatory molecules and infections that are overgrowing in the gut that can now slip into your bloodstream, they can go anywhere in the body and just create massive inflammation. And then we've also got fatigue, energy issues, especially if you get fungus slipping into your bloodstream. It can actually clump your red blood cells together and prevent good delivery of oxygen to your brain and the rest of your body. So I see a ton of, people with fatigue issues, really bad energy. They typically have fungal overgrowth with leaky gut. That's kind of like the biggest combo for chronic energy and fatigue issues that I've seen. And then headaches, skin issues, brain fog. Your skin is one of the main organs that's going to try to detox for you when your gut is unable to do it, when your liver is overstressed, when your gallbladder is not functioning well. And so that's why you see a lot of skin issues with leaky gut. But yeah, headaches, brain fog, because again, anything that slips into the bloodstream can go systemic, can go to your brain, cause a lot of brain inflammation. And also because your gut is the main way that toxins get out of your body, if that's backed up, if you're constipated, if you have leaky gut, if you're not able to eliminate waste properly, it's going to build up in your system and eventually affect things like the brain or the lungs or the skin or the kidneys or, even at the cellular level, just an inability to produce energy in the body. And probably the most detrimental symptom I see with people who have leaky gut is autoimmune disease. So what happens when that gut lining breaks down? And this was proven by a researcher up at Harvard or one of the Ivy League schools years ago. But he found that when that gut lining breaks down, your body releases a lot of zonulin, which is a type of protein, from that gut lining breakdown. And what he found was in all the autoimmune patients he saw, they had extremely high levels of this zonulin protein. So leaky gut is actually now known as the precursor to all autoimmune disease. So it's even more important to take care of your gut health. About 80% of your immune system lives in the gut. If that gut lining breaks down, not only do you have all those other issues I talked about, a few minutes ago, but now you're extremely susceptible to autoimmune issues. And what that means is an autoimmune issue is basically where your own immune system starts attacking your cells in your body. So if it happens in the thyroid, you call it Hashimoto's. If it happens in the joints, you call it rheumatoid arthritis. If it happens in, the gut, you call it Crohn's. So it really depends on where you're getting, an attack from your immune system, what tissues it's targeting. But this is really, really bad. When your own immune system starts identifying your own cells as a threat and a target to be eliminated, it causes so many issues. And I've seen this with so many people where they come to me and they're like, yeah, I have autoimmune disease now, whether it's psoriasis or rheumatoid arthritis or lupus or something like that. And they're like, yeah, and I had gut issues that started about 20 years ago. And I thought I was getting older. I never really tried to fix it. I just, kind of dealt with it. And now I've got this full-blown autoimmune disease. And I have not met a single person with autoimmunity who didn't have gut issues first. So really, you guys, when you get bloating and acid reflux and constipation and food sensitivities, it's a warning sign in your body. It's basically like the engine light coming on in your car, but for your body. Do not ignore those signals. Your gut is so highly tied to all these issues that I've talked about that if you don't ever really get to the root cause of what's damaging your gut, it's going to be really hard to prevent those further chronic diseases later on in life. And once you've gotten to the state where you're in full-blown autoimmunity, it's really hard to get out of it. And so don't wait until it's too late. Definitely make sure that you're healing those gut issues when they pop up. You're taking them seriously. You're not just blowing them off as old age, especially if you're in your 30s and 40s. You're not old enough to have health issues. Like that's not just old age. I know a lot of doctors will tell you that, but we don't want to ignore those signals. So it is the root cause of autoimmune disease. We do want to take that seriously, and we want to make sure that we're doing everything we can to keep our gut lining healthy. Now, what causes leaky gut? Great question, y'all. Number one thing I see with people, especially in America, because we're such a high stress society, is chronic stress over a long period of time. Now, you guys, this is shown in research. So I'm showing you guys research-backed things that are known to create leaky gut. Chronic stress over a long period of time, one of the number one ways that you destroy your gut, create leaky gut, and it leads to all those other issues over time. So we want to make sure we're doing things that can help mitigate stress. And so some of the top things that I always recommend to people are grounding at sunrise or sunset, or anytime during the day. Just go outside, stick your feet in the grass, the dirt, any sort of earth that is connected to the ground. So I love the beach. I live in Southern California, so I love going to the beach, going for beach walks, or just laying out in the sun with my feet in the sand. We're going for ocean swims, which is kind of full body grounding. So I love that. That's my number one thing. But I also like grounding in the grass. I've got a park right across the street from me, so I do some grounding a couple times a day in between calls. And it's just so helpful. You guys, there's so much research around how grounding for just 2 minutes can actually unclot your blood. So if you're at high risk for stroke or clots in your blood, that's one of the number one ways you can prevent that from happening. Only 2 minutes, they found in research that it actually thins your blood out and makes you less susceptible to clotting. Number two is after about 20 minutes, you get really good benefits in decreasing inflammation in the body. And they've done, there's a whole documentary on this. I believe it was called Earthing or Grounding. I can't remember the name of it, but they actually hooked up people's beds. They grounded their beds while they slept at night, and they found significant reduction in inflammation overnight just from grounding their bed. And so I know there's like a big fad out there now about, grounding sheets, grounding mats, all that stuff. The only company I trust is earthing.com. I don't have any affiliates with them, but they're just an amazing company. And they were the only grounding company before it became a huge fad nowadays. So I trust their products. They're the ones who did the research, who did the documentary, who showed that it worked. So that's why I recommend their products. They were the original creators of all grounding products. I know there's a lot of other companies out there now. I just haven't tried their products and I haven't really looked into them because I really trust earthing.com. So if you want some grounding stuff, if you live up north and you're like, I don't really want to ground in the snow, totally get it. So definitely just buy one of their grounding mats. They do sales, multiple times throughout the year. A lot of my patients, who live in New England and Canada and up north, they'll buy the grounding mats and they love them. They really notice a difference. But grounding is number one for stress reduction. Any sort of breathing exercise except Wim Hof, that one's actually going to put you in a fight or flight chronic stress state. So don't do Wim Hof if you're chronically stressed. But any sort of breathing exercise like box breathing, where if you have an exhalation focus, it's actually been shown to increase blood flow, dilate your blood vessels, create better blood flow and oxygenation to your brain and body. So what that means is you breathe in for 4 seconds. You hold for 4 seconds, you breathe out for 8 seconds, so you're doing twice as much exhaling, and then you hold for 4 seconds after that exhale, and you just do that, repeat that for 3 to 5 minutes. If you just do that every day, your nervous system is going to be so calm. So Just some simple tips. Chronic stress is probably the number one thing I see with people. Once I get them grounding and breathing, after 2 weeks, they're like, wow, my bloating is so much better and I can poop now. And I'm just like, yeah, of course you can, because now we've just calmed down your nervous system, gotten that vagus nerve from your brainstem to your gut to actually fire properly and create that peristalsis motion to get that stool out of your intestines. And now you can actually poop and your bloating goes away. Your gut is functioning better. Your immune system's back online, because stress also tanks your immune system and makes you susceptible to getting infections like parasites and bacteria and viruses and mold toxicity. And that is another huge cause of leaky gut. So if you're chronically stressed, not only are you damaging that gut lining, but you're also in a much higher likelihood of picking up a chronic infection that normally your immune system would be able to fight off. But because you've been chronically stressed for so long, now all of a sudden parasites can overgrow, mold can take over, bacteria, viruses can really just start overgrowing in the body. And that's another huge source of gut lining damage, especially parasites, especially fungal overgrowth like candida overgrowth in the gut is really, really detrimental to that gut lining. And mold toxins, those can also really create a lot of leaky gut and damage to that gut lining and inflammation to those cells that creates that leaky gut issue. Infections, chronic stress, medications like antibiotics. Oh my goodness, those are probably some of the worst, because if you guys don't know this, you have, billions of bacteria in your gut that have all these different functions that I already talked about. A lot of these good bacteria in our gut, they also help keep that junction nice and tight so that we don't get leaky gut and inflammation issues and all those other things that go along with it. If you kill off all the good bacteria in your gut with, medications like antibiotics, even other medications will have, side effects of causing what's called dysbiosis, where you basically get an overgrowth of the bad bacteria in your gut and that good bacteria just gets kind of wiped out. And so if you've heard of dysbiosis, that's all it means, is that your good bacteria got wiped out. Some of the bad bacteria gets starting to overgrow in the body. So this bacteria is really important for helping maintain those tight junctions in the gut. So medications can damage it. Highly processed foods, oh my goodness. Like if we're talking about probably the biggest source that you could avoid, it's that one. Because, we have a choice every time we go to the grocery store to cook whole foods that are healthy or to go to the center aisles and get all the junk that's processed. And a lot of the additives in food are just so damaging to the gut. They kill off a lot of the good gut bacteria. I'm going to have another episode on that in the future on what additives to watch out for, but especially products with natural flavors in them. You guys, I don't know if you know this, but they can actually have more than 100 chemicals in one natural flavor, more than 100. And they don't have to disclose it because it's considered a proprietary secret. This is our secret formula. We can't share this with you, which is total garbage, because a lot of times they have emulsifiers, which are caking agents. They have, solvents and a lot of, synthetic products in them. They can really wreak havoc on your gut. So that's a big one. Pesticides. Oh my goodness. There's a research study on glyphosate, aka Roundup. So glyphosate is the main component of Roundup, but this is heavily sprayed on wheat, corn, and soy. So if you guys are eating bread, corn, and soy in America, try to find organic always, because glyphosate has been shown in studies to create leaky gut and other GI issues as well. But it is shown to have a direct cause of leaky gut or that increased intestinal permeability in the gut lining. So we want to buy organic as much as humanly possible, especially, and if you live somewhere that has a farmer's market, you can ask the farmers, hey, what pesticide do you spray with? If they say glyphosate, do not buy from their farm. Find an organic farm. I know it's hard because a lot of farmers markets, if you buy organic, it is a lot more expensive, but just so you know, Walmart is actually one of the biggest distributors of organic produce in the United States. So if you're someone who's like, oh, I can't really find organic produce, go to Walmart. They have a ton of it. Obviously, getting a farmer's market is going to be the best because it's going to be local produce. It's going to have more of the nutrients in it. But if you don't have access to that, go to Walmart, go to Sprouts or Whole Foods or, one of those places that just has really good quality organic produce, because pesticides will wreak havoc on that gut lining and destroy it. And so you always want to avoid wheat, corn, and soy to the best of your abilities. And, obviously if you have an organic sourdough, absolutely, that stuff's amazing. So those are basically the biggest things that cause leaky gut. So again, chronic stress, always want to get that back down, because it's going to create a cascade of other events in your body that's going to just, create chronic illness. And then highly processed foods, medications, especially antibiotics, any sort of damage to a lot of the good bacteria in your gut because they do help keep those junctions tight. Pesticides, infections. And so you guys, this is why it's really important when you're trying to heal your gut issues, you've got to get some testing done to see what the heck is going on in your body. Please do not just jump on a detox. Oh, I bought this gut detox from Whole Foods, or I bought this parasite cleanse online. Don't do that, because if you don't understand how your body detoxes properly, you could get a really bad detox reaction, which I've seen in a lot of people because they don't understand that you really have to heal the gut lining, the gallbladder, and the liver before you can really start removing and going after systemic infections and toxins. So really, really important. Get some testing done. Work with someone who knows what they're doing, functional medicine doctor, naturopath, holistic health practitioners like NPs, nurse practitioners, and things like that who have that functional medicine background. Those are going to be the people you want to go to really help heal these issues. Otherwise, you're going to waste a lot of time and a lot of money trying to fix it yourself, and you could get worse in the process. And I've seen that with quite a few people. All right, so now that we've identified, holy crap, Dr. Davis, I have a lot of those symptoms that you mentioned. How do we heal from leaky gut? So number one is, most importantly, we want to reduce stress, like I just talked about, and we want to remove those infections in the body and any toxins that pop up on testing. So you want to get tested for things like mold toxins, parasites, bacterial overgrowth in the gut, viral infections. You want to get tested for toxins like heavy metals or chemicals or pesticide residue or phthalates, all that stuff in your body. And we want to go after everything and remove all that stuff that's in there that's not supposed to be there. And then we want to heal up those organs, and get them back to a state where they can actually function without all that help and all that assistance. So number one is get some testing done, remove those infections, get your stress levels down, start with the basics that I talked about, go start grounding if you live somewhere warm, or get a grounding mat if you're up north. Do the breathing exercises, look up there's tons you can find on YouTube, you guys. I just would stay away from Wim Hof until your brain is in more of a rest and digest state and you can actually handle it. So yeah, I would definitely try that box breathing that I talked about. So that's number one, get some testing done, remove those infections, because if you try to do these other things I'm going to recommend, like bone broth, super healing for the gut, because that gut lining is made up primarily of collagen. Bone broth is literally liquid collagen. So bone broth is a great way to heal leaky gut. Collagen peptides, you just want to make sure it says peptides on it, collagen peptides. Two brands I really love are Heart and Soil and Carnivore Aurelius. So they both have really, really clean brands where they source their collagen peptides from actual pasture-raised cows, cows that are actually outside eating grass on a farm. They're not eating corn and soy, and they're not shoved in these stalls like conventional, cows are, which is really sad. But they really source from great, great quality farms. So those are my top two for collagen peptides. But if you have time to make bone broth, that's the best way to do it. Order some bones from a regenerative farm. So look for regenerative farm. You can look up so many recipes online, put it in a crock pot, let it simmer for about 24 to 48 hours, and you've got a ton of bone broth that you can put, you can freeze it, put it in the freezer for whenever you need it. But that stuff is really, really, really healing for the gut. Just know that if you store it in the freezer, make sure it cools off completely before you put it in the plastic. Otherwise, you're going to leach a bunch of microplastics into the bone broth, which we do not want, because that can definitely damage the gut lining as well. So just a little pro tip, do not put boiling bone broth in plastic before shoving it in the freezer. I wish there was like a good way to store it in glass, but I have not found a good way to do that because the glass can actually break if it expands too much in the freezer. So you do have to store it in plastic bags, but it's a great way to just stock up on bone broth so you always have it on hand. And it's not something that you'll have to do forever, you guys, but for a short period of time, doing bone broth, drinking that every day for maybe a couple months can really, really help replenish the collagen and heal up the gut lining. But if you have a chronic infection, if you have toxins, if you have something that's chronically damaging that gut lining, it's not going to do you much good. So that's why my number one place that I start with people is we've got to remove the stuff in your body that is not supposed to be there, that is damaging the gut, that's damaging your liver, that's putting stress on your immune system, that's tanking your energy, creating a lot of brain fog and fatigue issues and joint pain and all that stuff. We've got to get that stuff out safely. And then on the back end of that, that's when bone broth can really, really help just further heal up that gut lining. Because for me, if you know my story, I had a massive parasite infection. I mean, I was passing hundreds of them for about 4 to 6 months. The biggest one was 3 feet long. It was gigantic. It was probably about 1 centimeter wide and maybe half a centimeter thick. It was disgusting. But also for me, it was really satisfying because I saw this stuff come out and I was like, oh, This makes sense why I had gut issues for over a decade. There was literally all these worms that were just living inside my intestines, damaging the gut lining, creating all of the symptoms that I was dealing with, like bloating and constipation and acid reflux and food sensitivities. And now, you guys, I can eat dairy and gluten every single day. I have zero issues because I healed the gut lining. If you're dealing with food sensitivities, the number one way to fix them, to get back to eating those foods, is to heal leaky gut. But first, you got to figure out what's damaging it. So always, if possible, get testing done. Work with someone who can help you remove that stuff safely. You know, the toxins, the infections that can help you heal, you know, those organs that might be damaged. You can look at your blood work and any sorts of other testing that you get done. And make sure that you're just getting on the right track. So that's the number one way to go about it. Hopefully this was helpful. And if you're someone listening to this podcast episode and you're like, wow, I relate to all those things that Dr. Davis just talked about. I have all those symptoms. I don't really know where to start. I really want to, you know, get a good look on what's damaging my gut. I want to get this stuff out and I really want to get healed so that I don't end up with those health issues later on. If you just look at the show notes, I have a little link in there. So if you're listening to this episode, I'm going to offer you guys $100 off an initial consult plus labs package to work with me. So we'll basically get some labs done to see what exactly is going on in your body, what needs to be removed, what infections, what toxins, what organ dysfunctions going on. And then we'll do an initial consult before that and you'll get $100 off that. So you'll basically get the initial consult for free. So if you're interested in that, if you've been looking for someone to help you really get back on track with your gut health, definitely, you know, click that link below. If you're someone who's just like, this was so informative, loved it, great episode, you know, definitely, again, like the podcast, give me a 5-star review. If you're on YouTube, subscribe to the channel so you get notifications when I upload episodes. I'm going to be uploading episodes every 2 weeks, so just keep an eye out for that. And if you just want to learn more and you just want to, you know, kind of find me online, again, look in the show notes. I have my Instagram linked on there. I have my website. So if you want to just, you know, read through that kind of stuff and just look at all the Trash or Treasure series that I have on Instagram about, you know, how to find good quality foods, that's a good place to start as well. Thank you for joining me. Hope you love the episode and I'll see you in a couple weeks.